Paris, often known as the City of Lights, has long been synonymous with romance, elegance, and timeless love. Yet, for Sophie Duval, the city's gleaming boulevards, charming cafes, and iconic landmarks had become haunting reminders of the intricate web of deceit she had been spinning for the past few months. She sat at a finely set table inside La Belle Époque, one of Paris's most prestigious restaurants, across from her lover, Lucas Bont. The rich aromas of gourmet food and the delicate clinking of wine glasses filled the air, but none of it could ease the tightening knot of anxiety in Sophie's chest. Sophie, now 35, was the epitome of beauty, intelligence, and sophistication. Everything a man could desire. Born and raised in Lyon, she had moved to Paris in her mid-20s after marrying Alexander Duval, the man who had once been the love of her life. Alexander, 3 years her senior, was a world-renowned architect, famed for his designs that masterfully blended modernity with France's historical allure. Their relationship had been a whirlwind, meeting at a quaint café near the Seine where Alexander had initiated a conversation with Sophie about architecture. A shared passion. That chance encounter blossomed into a romance, and soon after they were married. A union that appeared flawless from the outside. Together, they were Paris's golden couple. Charming, accomplished, and living in an elegant apartment with a view of the river. Their life was the picture of perfection, filled with extravagant getaways to the south of France, weekends mingling with intellectuals and artists, and lavish parties hosted in their artfully designed home where Alexander's architectural models adorned the walls. However, beneath this glamorous surface, Sophie was restless. The passion and excitement that had once defined their relationship had dulled, replaced by the monotony of a life constrained by Alexander's demanding career and the expectations of their carefully crafted public image. It was in this emotional void that Lucas Bont entered her life. Lucas, at 42, was a businessman with a raw, rugged charm that seemed too untamed for the corporate world he moved in. His presence exuded magnetism, the type of man who could effortlessly draw attention just by entering a room. His strong jawline, striking blue eyes, and athletic build made heads turn wherever he went. Sophie first encountered him at a gallery opening, introduced by a mutual acquaintance. From the moment Lucas kissed her hand, something within Sophie stirred. He was everything Alexander was not: impulsive, daring, and unpredictable, whereas Alexander was measured, thoughtful, and deliberate. Their flirtation began innocently, with light-hearted conversation over champagne and playful banter at social gatherings. But it wasn't long before their connection intensified. Sophie found herself irresistibly drawn to Lucas, craving the excitement and unpredictability he brought into her otherwise predictable life. One evening, after too much wine and one too many lingering looks, their flirtation turned into something much deeper, an affair. The guilt weighed heavily on Sophie, but she couldn't help herself. With Lucas, she felt alive again, as if she had rediscovered a part of herself that had been lost in the routine of her marriage. For months, the affair continued. Sophie led a double life, carefully juggling her role as Alexander's devoted wife with her passionate rendezvous with Lucas. She knew it was wrong, but the exhilaration was impossible to resist. Alexander, ever the workaholic, seemed too absorbed in his work to notice, or so Sophie thought. Tonight, however, as she sat across from Lucas at La Belle Époque, something felt off. The evening had begun like any other. Playful banter over fine wine and exquisite cuisine. Lucas was his usual self, full of laughter and light conversation about his latest business deal. But Sophie sensed an underlying tension that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Lucas leaned back in his chair, a familiar smirk playing on his lips. "You're quiet tonight, Sophie. Is everything all right?" he asked, reaching out to touch her hand. Sophie forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just thinking," she replied, her voice trailing off as she looked out the window. The Paris streets were buzzing with evening activity, but instead of the usual comfort the city provided, Sophie felt exposed, as if the walls were slowly closing in on her. Lucas raised an eyebrow, sensing her unease, but before he could press further, Sophie's phone buzzed on the table beside her wine glass. She glanced down, expecting it to be a casual message from a friend or an email, But the name on the screen made her heart race. It was a message from Alexander. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the phone, her heart racing in her chest. The message was short, but it struck her like a blow. Enjoy the wine, Sophie. I hope it tastes better than betrayal. The blood drained from her face, and her breath caught as she read the words over again, disbelief crashing over her. How did he know? Her heart pounded, panic welling up inside her. She felt Lucas's gaze on her, but she couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. Everything okay? Lucas asked, his tone shifting from playful to concerned. Sophie quickly flipped the phone over, hiding the message from sight. She forced a smile, though her mind raced uncontrollably. It's nothing, she lied, though her voice faltered, betraying her unease. Lucas didn't push further, but Sophie could tell he wasn't convinced. She tried to focus on their conversation, on the meal, on anything other than the message. But then her phone buzzed again, the sound cutting through the low hum of the restaurant like a blade. She didn't want to look, didn't want to see whatever Alexander had sent next. But before she could stop herself, her hand moved, unlocking the phone once more. Another message. You always said you loved French cuisine. I wonder if you'll enjoy it as much when your life falls apart. Look around, Sophie. Do you feel safe? Her throat tightened. She cast a glance around the restaurant, scanning the faces of the other diners. Was Alexander here? Was he watching them right now? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Lucas noticed her growing tension. Sophie, what's going on? You're acting strange. I need to go, she whispered, barely audible as she pushed her chair away from the table. Lucas frowned, confusion written all over his face. What? Why? What's happening? Sophie stood, her legs shaky beneath her. She couldn't explain it to Lucas. Not now. How could she tell him that the carefully constructed world she had built was crashing down? That Alexander, the man she thought she had fooled, knew everything. But before she could even move, her phone buzzed again. She knew she should ignore it, but the urge to look was too strong. This time, the message made her stomach plummet. By the time you return home, I'll be gone. And so will the life you've been living. Consider this your last meal as Mrs. Duval. Bon appetit. Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes as the weight of Alexander's words settled in. He wasn't bluffing. He knew about the affair, and he was leaving her. All at once, the reality hit her like a tidal wave. She had lost Alexander, and with him, everything. Lucas stood up, alarmed by the sudden change in her demeanor. Sophie, talk to me. What's going on? But Sophie couldn't speak. Her throat was tight, her chest constricted with fear and regret. Without another word, she turned and fled from the restaurant, her heels clacking against the marble floor as she pushed through the doors and into the cool night air. The streets of Paris had quieted as the evening wore on, the once bustling crowds thinning out. Sophie's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotion swirling inside her as she walked quickly down the cobblestone streets. There was no way she could go home now. The thought of facing the empty apartment, of confronting the truth of what she had done, was unbearable. The man who had given her everything had been betrayed by her, and now she was left with nothing. She wandered aimlessly through the city, her tears blurring the glow of the streetlights and the soft gleam of the shop windows. Memories of her life with Alexander flooded her mind, images of their wedding day, the trips they had taken together, the quiet mornings they had spent in each other's arms. How had it all fallen apart? Sophie had always believed she could have it all, that she could love Alexander and indulge in her affair with Lucas without consequence. But now she saw how wrong she had been. She had taken Alexander's love for granted, convinced that he would never find out, never leave her. And now here she was, alone. And the worst part? She had no one to blame but herself. Eventually, she found herself standing at the edge of the Seine, gazing out at the dark waters that mirrored the twinkling lights of the city. The river, calm and serene, seemed to mock her. Everything in Paris had once felt like a fairy tale to Sophie, but now it felt hollow, unforgiving. Her phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. She hesitated before glancing at it, her heart sinking as she read the final message from Alexander. Asterisk goodbye, Sophie. I hope you find what you're looking for. You won't find it with him, or in the life you've been living. But I hope one day you'll understand what you've lost, asterisk. And with that, it was over. Alexander was gone. What's your take on all this? Thanks for sticking around for our tale of betrayal and revenge. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss out on our next one. But remember, if you're under 18, some things just aren't for you. Our stories can get pretty intense. Until next time, stay tuned for more twisted tales where revenge is served hot.